our Wyoming citizens. It also increases the market opportunity for our professionals. Our professionals would be able, especially on the fringe states, if you're practicing, say in Sheridan, and you've got a patient at Decker, you'd have to hold another Montana light. You'd have to have a license in Montana. Well, if Montana becomes part of the compact, that transaction can happen easily and through telehealth, because that's this allows now for telehealth in that arena. And it supports relocating military spouses. This is key. I've worked with DOD on many compacts, and they're involved in actually there are about 6 compacts in the hopper. So you're going to be seeing many more of these. You've already seen some. I've brought some to you from before, but dentistry, massage therapy, there's a bunch of them coming. Okay. But military, the DOD really supports compacts because, as you know, military members tend to change every 2 years. They'll do a PCS, a permanent change station, and for military spouses especially, it can be difficult for them to get up and running. With a interstate compact, they can within a week or a couple of days actually get that certificate and be in practice. DOD is really pushing interstate compacts, and it improves continuity of care when clients have to travel or relocate. So again, talking to the telehealth portion of this. So I need to dispel a few myths. As with any existing licensure compact, this compact has no impact on our scope of practice. Okay. The laws of the state that we have on the books, any practitioner comes in, there's nothing in the compact that tells us how we have to practice. The practitioners will come in and they have to practice, even if it's different in their home state, they have to practice according to our laws. So the scope of practice does not change, and it does not take over any state regulatory authority. And again, with existing licensure compacts, this compact will leave state-specific licensure requirements in place. So if you don't want to practice under the compact, say you're a Colorado person and they join the compact, you don't have to come to Wyoming and practice under the compact, and you can get a Wyoming license if you want. So it doesn't preclude getting a single license. Okay. So that system stays as intact and will not take over any state licensing systems. And the compact enhances the state's authority to protect the public and regulate counseling professions because of that shared database that we're going to have with all the states. And as I mentioned earlier, the counseling compact will have no significant fiscal implications to the state at all. Okay. And this is borne out by other compacts and by fiscal notes in other states to our west that are looking at this right now. And if you look at our fiscal note, it's minimal. And again, not on the general fund, but on the professionals themselves. I've talked to the association here in Wyoming, the Wyoming Counseling Association. They're the ones who actually have asked me to present it to you. So they're all in full support. Spoken to the state board. I've spoken to many organizations, and I have yet to find anyone that finds any fault with it. So with that, I'll be open for questions, and I'll let other folks talk about it as well.
Very good. Questions, committee? I have one question for you. Sure. And I apologize for not reading the bill in depth. It's too big. The question would be, and that would be the disciplinary actions. And I assume it's like some of the other compacts we've done, is that if, say this practitioner does something wrong in North Carolina, and North Carolina is part of the pact, what is that? How does that work between the states as far as imposing disciplinary action?
So you can read it in section 8 on page 24. If you want to go into depth, but and it's under a section called adverse actions. Basically, the home state, of course, has complete authority over its licensees because they're holding the license, say Wyoming, and they can take any adverse action. But the state where you're practicing under the compact also has the ability to take adverse actions against a person that you think maybe is not, practicing legally or practicing ethically or whatever. For sure, in the compact as well, if the home state actually pulls your license or revokes or suspends it, the authority, the privilege to practice in every other state becomes null and void.
Okay, and the second part of that question would be, if something happens we'll just go back to North Carolina because it's what's on my brain this morning. If there is an adverse action in North Carolina, are they required to report that to the compact, even if the license is not taken away by the home state? But then does that get reported to all the states within the compact?
That's the beauty of the database. Almost instantly, all the state boards would know adverse actions on somebody. Without that database, someone could practice for a long time, and we wouldn't know that. So that's a key point of all of these compacts is the system, the database system where you can look up somebody and or the system can actually alert and flag state boards to someone's bad doing.
Very good. Got further questions, committee? Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All these things sound good, but the things that we have control over here is actually reciprocity here. I mean, when military people move here, it would seem to be the prudent thing would be for us to have reciprocity on the books before we even join in and trying to get other states to have reciprocity.
So this.
Go ahead, Senator Pepys.
So this is really portability rather than reciprocity. Okay, it's the portability of the licensure. Your reciprocity basically says that if I have a license in one state, then the other state will act reciprocally and grant me a license in that state. We're not granting. You practice only on one license, and that license is just portable based on a certificate to practice. So it's really not reciprocity. In my profession as an architect, we have true reciprocity. So we have, and it's not through interstate compact, it's through our association. In 50 states and 4 territories, I can go practice if I want under what is called a blue book that I get from my national organization. Okay? We've had this for many, many years. Once I get that, it's called a blue book. Once I get that, then I can go to another state and I don't have to show my credentials and everything, but I do have to buy a license. And so under this compact, you don't buy a license, you just get a certificate to practice. I'm not sure I asked you, Senator. I answered that.
Follow up, Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, yeah, under your license, if the states did not have that reciprocity agreement in place, then that wouldn't take place. And that's what I'm saying is, as a state, we should be leading and we should be doing reciprocity so that other states around us especially start doing those same things by basically picking up the phone and calling a lawmaker in the neighboring state and say, hey, we passed it. Can you work on it down there? I mean, That's just my opinion, though.
Go ahead.
I think, Mr. Chairman, I think that the occupational licensure aspect of interstate compacts, you know, we have many, we've got about 25 or so interstate compacts here in the state. Some are border compacts, some are they're border territorial compacts. I forgot what that other compact is. There's another type of compact, and then there's licensure, occupational compacts. And they're starting to gain popularity now among all the professions, because what it does is it excludes the feds. It's a contract from state to state. And prior to this, states could not enter into interstate compacts unless they got approval by Congress. That went away for licensure compacts, for occupational licensure compacts. There was a couple of court decisions that said the feds don't have to get involved if it's basically this licensure type compact, and it has nothing to do with federal regulations like interstate commerce or communications or anything like that, that the feds govern. So the contracts between the states have become very popular, number one, to exclude the feds, and number two, because it's a way to be able to provide that ability to agree on a contractual document without having to go through a national organization. The architects, they go through a national organization called the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. All the boards got together, and it's another group. The problem is not too many organizations have the wherewithal to do that, especially these smaller ones. You're going to see a compact coming up from barbers and cosmetologists. It's just not going to happen with that group. So interstate compacts are a way to still provide that contractor relationship and get to the portability of the licenses, even though it's not a true reciprocal license. You know, if there was another way to do it, Senator Bouchard, I'm sure they would have done it, but it's just not happened like the American Institute or like the NCARB did, National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. But certainly we've seen some already. We've seen the physicians have a compact now. Now they did it differently. They didn't do a compact that allowed for certificate of a privilege to practice. They actually required a license in every state, but you don't have to show credentials. If you have a license in one state that's in the compact, we won't look at beyond that. We'll just issue you a license. There's different ways of doing a compact. Most of the occupational ones have done it under a single home license with a professional, a certificate to practice, privilege to practice. So I don't know if I've answered that well enough, but.
And I think I would point out here too in the other compacts, I don't know how many we've done in the last 7 years, 8 years, but that a state does not, they're not required. We're not lowering the standards from one state to another. In other words, but via the compact, the standards are maintained. In other words, this state doesn't have, we're not taking somebody from another state with much less requirements, with much lower standards. We don't have to accept that. They have to meet our requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll find that in the compact, the requirements are there, a master's level degree and whatever. Every compact is different. What they require, you know, clinical time or whatever. Every compact has its, but all the states have agreed, and pretty much all the national organizations that practitioners belong to subscribe to minimum standards. Certainly, also, I know that the the issue for Wyoming is that it's important for us, I think, to be one of the first states to be enact this, because if we wait, as we have on other occasions, the commission will be stood up and all the rules and regs will be written before any of our people will get there. If we are one of the first 10 states, then we will actually be a voice at the table to write those rules and regs. So I think we have some voice in the matter. If we're going to belong to the compact, it would be good for us to get in early.
Very good. Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a real specific question because since this has to do with LPCs, I am concerned about what happens with the drug addictions professionals that have, I mean, because as you know, that the fight was LPCs didn't want the other addiction professional certifications in the loop. So what does that do in here? I mean, does LPC, or do they have carte blanche across the line? But what about the other people that have addiction professional certifications? So that's a concern here in this bill, because I think there's another wall that's going to get set up there. Senator
Mr. Chairman, I did actually have a conversation with the addiction professionals, and I don't know if they'll be speaking today, but I spoke with Mr. Frank about it and a few others. They're not opposed to the bill. In fact, the organizations, I know they've had some rough time in the past. I think they're probably looking at hopefully mending the fences and coming together. Actually, this may help. There may be the opportunity to in the future to provide some endorsements on a license, LPC license, so that folks who do addictions counseling could have those endorsements on their license. We kind of talked a little bit about that, but as far as the compact itself, it's not going to change anything that we do in the state. Okay, the practices that have happened and will happen won't change. It's all it is the portability of the license.
Very good. Senator McEwen, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pretty simple question. I'm trying to wrap my mind around what the model of this is. In other words, we're going to have this database, and I don't think the computer fairy is going to come down and drop off equipment. And who runs the compact day to day? There's got to be a staff or something of some kind. And as I look through this, I'll be the first to admit I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. So if you could explain that to me, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're sharper than any tool in my shed. So go ahead, Senator Pappas.
Yes. Who runs this? It's the commission. So if you look under Chapter 9, there will be an establishment of it's on page 28. It's the establishment of the commission. The commission will have staff and will direct. That's why there's a cost to the states. The states will be assessed a cost. All the states that join the compact, and it will that commission will run everything. It's not. I don't believe there's a whole lot of pressure on the state boards, other than, in fact, if anything, the database that the commission will take care of and is accessible by our states. It's probably going to relieve some work of the states. We do have Mr. Greg Searles here today, and he could probably speak to that if you'd like from the state boards. So I don't think there's an issue about we're not keeping the database here. We just access the database. So if you're asking whether how onerous it will be for us, I don't think so. If anything, I think it'll be less onerous because we'll have all that information available and not have to go seek it.
Follow up, Senator McCune.
That was half the question. The other half is, I just want to make sure I understand this. So it basically would be a state funded thing versus the compacts, people in the compacts funding it.
Mr.
Senator
Chairman,
Pappas.
no, the state does not fund it. So there's no general fund dollars. It's funded by the profession. Okay, the licensees, whoever is a licensed professional counselor pays a fee. I think it's $350, I believe, for first time,
Well,
and $250 every biennium, or every 2 years. They pay a fee, and that runs their board. Their board collects those fees and pays whatever the expenses are, including whatever it takes to pay the fee to the commission. So there's no state funds involved. It's all on the professional licensure, the professional, the LPCs to pay their own way. That's true of pretty much every state board. It's no impact on state dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for clearing that up. I thought I heard earlier you said something to the effect the state's going to set this up, and that's why I was just asking about the funding and the model.
Yeah.
Make sure I understood it.
Mr. Chairman, it is a contract, I mean, between the states, right? So the states actually do have to authorize this, but they don't pay for it, okay? We do have state boards. State boards provide their own funding, but it's not on the general fund.
very good. Let's go ahead and bring up departments. Welcome to Labor and Health. It's a long ways from that back row.
Good morning, committee. I'm Greg Searles, one of the executive directors of the Professional Licensing Board Office and the executive director for the Mental Health Professions Licensing Board Office. The board has discussed this numerous times and is in favor of the passing of this. The only concerns that were brought forth were by our public member, and part of that was the stress on staff for the fact of getting it set up and running in the information that we have to share with the commission once it's established. After that, that will ease because we won't be processing those applications, things like that. But the initial setup, there definitely will be some additional requirements put on the staff. Other than that, as Senator Pappas said, the board will collect fees. We will pay from our general or from our special funds to pay for the annual fee that will be addressed to us, but also as a LPC requests a privilege to practice in another state, most of the commissions are asking or giving them a fee as well, in addition to our privilege to practice fee, which will be established by the board if this passes through. So with that, I would stand for further question.
Questions, committee? Senator McEwen wants to ask a question. It's on his face. Go ahead, sir.
Did you just say the commission's gonna maybe kick in fees also?
Go ahead, sir.
Chairman Baldwin and Senator McEwen, yes, typically the commission who establishes and runs the database makes a fee to the applicant that's applying for a privilege to practice in another state, in addition to the fee that the state charges. And probably a bad example, just like when you purchase a ticket for Cheyenne Frontier Days. Cheyenne Frontier Days is making a charge for you, and then you have an additional fee from the ticket master or whoever's issuing the ticket. It would be similar to that kind of charge. And that will help fund that commission.
So we collect fees, right? At the state. And then we take those fees and reissue them out via the commission.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now I have a full understanding.
Okay. Okay, further questions, committee? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming. Okay, I believe that's all the departments. Let's bring up some agencies or anybody else who wants to comment here in the room. Welcome back to Labor and Health. Feels like your second home, doesn't it?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Lindsay Simino with the Wyoming Counseling Association. The association has actually been working on this compact for many years with the National Institute of Interstate Compacts. We are very excited that we were able to bring this bill forward to you. And the reason that we decided to bring it forward during a budget session as opposed to a general session is because we would very much like to be one of those first 10 states to enact this compact so that we have some influence, some say in how this is brought to the table as far as the commission, as far as the fees. I'd like to address some concerns today and then also speak to why my association is in support of this, as well as some professional experiences with the reciprocity process. Right now, we have 20 states in the union that have either some type of legislation or have passed it. We are very confident that we are going to meet our 10-state threshold by the end of this calendar year, meaning that this compact will more than likely be enacted in 2022. And we are very hopeful that Wyoming will be a part of it. We actually have 3 states that have enacted it. We have Maryland and Georgia, and then recently Alabama enacted it under emergency legislation due to their own mental health crisis with COVID-19. So Alabama is technically on the board, although it did not go through the same legislative process. It was more, it was emergency driven. We really like this because privilege to practice ensures both parties keep states' rights. There's always concern whenever we open our borders, will Wyoming be able to have a say for public safety? And because of the privilege to practice, not only are we able to revoke that privilege as needed, but we are also able to maintain the regulation of our own licensees. Other states have the right to revoke that privilege as needed. For the record, that may not impact your Wyoming license. The best example I have of this is in Colorado. To practice licensed professional counseling, you need to pass their jurisprudence. If I was in the compact and decided to practice in Colorado without passing their jurisprudence, they could revoke that privilege to practice. Wyoming doesn't have a jurisprudence, so I'm technically within the rules of Wyoming, and more than likely my license would be reviewed because there was a red flag. But I did not violate Wyoming law. The database helps not just with disciplinary, so we're able to know what's going on in other states, but it also helps with quicker licensure. When it comes to our military spouses, we're wanting them to have that licensure as quickly as possible, so then they are able to enter our workforce. Especially if somebody is stationed in, let's say F.E. Warren Air Force Base for 2 years, if that takes 4 to 6 months, that is lost for our community, that's lost for Wyoming's economy. So we are wanting that quicker licensure for them so they are able to engage quickly and easier. This does keep us independent from the federal government, again, because we are able to kind of come to a contract within states. We definitely prefer that as well. As far as the concerns when it comes to reciprocity and addictions, as Senator Pappas said, this will not impact other professions at all. This changes the Practice Act only for Wyoming professional counselors. That does mean that the reciprocity bill on addictions that we passed through committee or through the legislature last year will stand. So those reciprocity issues with addictions, it should not change. That bill should be fine. When it comes to interstate compacts, it's every profession that needs to bring an interstate compact. That is why the Wyoming Association of Addictions Professionals unanimously supports our compact, because they know that they have one a few years from now, and they're wanting the similar privilege to practice. The reason that this is better than reciprocity is that Wyoming private providers cannot afford multiple reciprocities from multiple states. In order for us to do that, it's a lot of paperwork, and it's very much a renewal process. So for private providers to maintain those multiple reciprocities, those multiple renewals, it actually costs private providers more than what the fee through the licensing board is going to be to participate in the compact. I would like to correct part of Senator Papas's testimony. It is $350 for your initial licensure, which as a provisional, many times your employer will cover that. And then it's $125 every 2 years to have your license renewed. And so I believe he quoted 250. And so for us private providers, all of our licensing fees are tax deductible. And so for the majority of private providers, 125 is very reasonable. I think those are all of my notes. I would like to emphasize to the board that professions are moving away from reciprocity. And that is because of telehealth, that is because of Zoom, that is because of technology. Professions are recognizing that reciprocity is not working anymore. I believe the last time I checked the National Institute of Interstate Compacts, they have 12 more interstate compacts getting ready to come down, including for the profession of social work, as well as K-12 teachers. So we are moving towards more and more compacts professionally. And for Wyoming to get in from the ground floor, it'll be very beneficial. And we will do it before Colorado, which could be fun. So I stand for question.
Questions, committee. Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would you think the military part of this bill is, I mean, what's percentage of counselors do you think, or we have people moving, coming and going in military? I mean, is that an important part of this bill or?
Ms. Simeon.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Bouchard, I absolutely believe it's an important part of this bill. I will say that I have a skewed perspective because I do practice in Cheyenne. Therefore, I do know a lot of providers who have either relocated and had to go through the reciprocity process, or more heartbreakingly, have left and they are not able to continue their care with their clients here in Wyoming. And they are scrambling when they are getting those orders in order to help their clients have that continuity of care. And if private providers or community mental health centers are booked, it's harder for them to get those clients relocated before they leave the state. And so it really helps with continuity of care for those military providers. If they end up only having 8 weeks to move, they are not in a rush to relocate those clients. I do believe, I shouldn't say no, I do believe there is a representative from the Department of Defense on Zoom who can speak to that and why the Department of Defense is partnering with the Wyoming Counseling Association and getting this bill passed.
Thank you, Ms. Simeon. Follow up, Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm looking at page 23 of the bill. And what's interesting is how simple the language is there. Active duty military personnel or their spouse shall designate a home state, which that would be when they move into Wyoming, where the individual has a current license in good standing. The individual may retain the home state designation during that period that the person is a service member, and it should say or spouse, as it should say there. So I think that would have to be a change. But I think what I'm trying to get at here is this could be a bill in its own, just for people that come to Wyoming, where we don't need to have a compact to do that. We could just put this little section here into law. Would you not agree with that?
Ms. Simeon.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Bouchard, yes and no. Absolutely. If you wanted to dissect and make that into law, that is something we could do. It still, though, leaves the major issue for the Wyoming private providers that reciprocity is difficult. Personal story, before COVID and telehealth was a thing, I had multiple clients driving from Nebraska to Cheyenne to see me, which I thought was bizarre. And I looked into getting my Nebraska license in order to rent an office for a day to go to a very small town in Nebraska and see clients. It was not feasible. It was not feasible for my practice. It was not feasible financially, and it was not feasible to maintain. So even though we could absolutely take that piece of the bill for our military spouses, it doesn't change the fact that for Wyoming providers and Wyoming community mental health, reciprocity is becoming outdated and is very hard for us as providers to maintain for continuity of care.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Further questions, Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask about the cost to the patient, because they're going to be the ones paying for this commission. Do you have a feel for how many of your members receive Medicaid or Medicare? Is that a big source of payment to your members?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Furphy, licensed professional counselors nationally are not able to bill Medicare. There is a bill in the U.S. Senate in order to allow us to become in-network providers with Medicare. But as of right now, no licensed provider or no licensed professional counselor can bill Medicare. Medicaid is a big part of all providers' revenue, because we are in this to help people. So we do try to have as many insurance payers contract with us in order to meet their members. Yes, obviously our overhead does impact our patients. What we see projected with the fee is that we will save money long-term by not having to do multiple reciprocities. And instead, for the providers to choose to go into the compact, it will actually be more financially efficient for them. And then thus the cost for patients will actually go down. I would also like to remind the committee that for the fee, it is only the providers who choose to be a part of the compact that will have to pay that additional fee. If they do not want to be a part of the compact, say they are in the heart of Casper, every single person they see is in Casper, they will not have to be a part of that fee. They can elect to just have their Wyoming license. And so it is only going to be the providers who elect to be a part of the compact that will also then incur that possible fee.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else in the audience wish to testify today? Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This too is my second home away from home. Thank you very much, members of the committee. Andy Somerville, Executive Director for WAMSAC Community Mental Health Centers. And I want to touch on a few points. WAMSAC is very supportive of this bill, and we're in the position where we employ all of these different license types: LPCs, LCSWs, addictions professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, the whole gamut are employed at our centers. And we have seen one of the biggest workforce challenges that, and I'll say my members that have more wisdom and time on this earth than me are telling me that they have ever seen. We have a huge mental health workforce shortage that has been exacerbated over the last 18 months. We're seeing an increasing number of professionals retire. Last year was one of the biggest retirement years we've ever seen. We have clinics across the state that are running at a 30% staffing deficit right now. And Wyoming's not alone in this. It's been a national trend. But as we know, in Wyoming, with the exception of a few of our larger populated areas in the state, it has always been difficult to attract the number of providers that we need to meet the mental health needs of our state. The Health Rural Service Agency has declared the entire state of Wyoming a mental health workforce shortage. We've had that designation for quite some time, and certainly longer than my tenure with WAMSAC. One of the things that the LPC Interstate Compact, which is the trend. I mean, we're aware of the social workers wanting to do one. We've seen several that have come through this body. Certainly, that's the way these are going. One of the things that would allow us to do is to help those private practitioners in our rural areas build private practices. So as we've seen the workforce pattern shift, especially in the last 2 years, my centers have had to get more creative in attracting and retaining and recruiting staff. That includes doing contract work with private providers in a way that we really have not done in a while, at least, if not ever before. And the areas where we experience the most difficulty are not our two major populated centers. It is all of our rural areas. So we have community mental health centers in all that cover all 23 counties. And some of those centers are in very, very small population areas of the state where they may only have 4 mental health professionals on staff. And frankly, in those areas, we're not picky. If we can hire a psychologist or an LPC or a CAP or an LCSW, that's who we're going to hire. We're going to make that work. Those areas are suffering from the workforce shortage the worst. It's my smallest centers in the smallest populated counties that are having the most difficulty recruiting new mental health professionals to move into those areas. So it brings us back to that idea of contract work. We want those professionals to stay in the rural areas. Telehealth is great, but it's not a panacea. Some people really do need in-person care. And so if a private practitioner can do telehealth out of state through the compact and remain in, say, like Basin or Afton or somewhere like that, that's very small, that helps us keep a mental health professional on the ground. And for us, that's twofold. Number one, we may very well be contracting with that person to help us with services at the community mental health center as well, if they don't want to work for us full time. But it also allows us to make sure that there are other alternatives to the community mental health centers in those areas, which is incredibly important. Community mental health centers can't provide all of the care, even in those areas. We need the entire continuum accessible, and private providers are absolutely indispensable in terms of meeting the mental health care needs in the state. The other topic I want to touch on is the recruitment of traveling spouses. We have seen, and certainly at community mental health centers, we pay for our providers' licensing fees and kind of take that burden off as a recruitment tool to bring them in. But as was previously testified, it can certainly be a barrier to getting them on board and on board quickly, as well as if they are leaving the state, such as they're attached to military spouses. If we can keep them on as a telehealth provider to help bridge that gap, that's something that we need to be doing, especially in this workforce challenge situation that we're in. And so we really want to make licensing as streamlined as possible. The last point that I'll touch on, Mr. Chairman, is that what we really like about the compacts is it's an agreement between states. I have been at national conversations where they've talked about, and I imagine this topic comes up every once in a while, national licensing coming from the feds in various professions. We think it's really important to keep control in the state over what our licensing regulations are, what our rules are, making sure that we can keep our Wyoming citizens safe and make sure that they're ensuring that they're receiving good and proper care and nobody's being put in danger. We really do not like the idea of a federal licensing. So again, this is an agreement between states, and we think that that's the best way to go. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions.
Questions, committee? Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My head's about to explode because a lot of things that you said were the things that I spent 3 years on reciprocity with. I'm concerned about Wyoming right now. This could be a 10-year process that we're talking about. And then these issues that you brought up are now. A lot of what we're seeing in this bill, we could do this across all licenses now and allow and fix the problem here. Because that is my concern, getting people here for treatment here. So even if we look at just the military part that I was talking about, we could do that in law on across all kinds of licenses here in Wyoming. But as you know, we would have fences put up and people arguing against that. But I think we have to lead. I think we have to be the state that leads on this issue. I don't think a 10-year fight is going to fix our problem now. And that's what is my concern. We were talking about all this. What do we do to fix it now? And so if we ran any of this now, would we be in the same fight? I mean, all these things that we're talking about are all nice and warm and fuzzy, but you know as well as I do that you and the last person that testified were the people that I was up against when we were trying to fix the reciprocity problem, where we were stopping people from coming here that had licenses for 10 years in another state, that moved here, packed up and put their stuff in a U-Haul, came here. We had one from Nebraska that grew up here, said, I wanted to bring my kids back to where I grew up. I mean, heck, everybody can go back and look at this. I freaking broke down, cried on it because I couldn't believe that she was being bullied so hard. I want to fix things now. And I hear all this 10-year fight to try to fix something. Tell me how this is going to help us now.
Ms. Somerville.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Bouchard, I think you bring up a lot of very good and in the moment points. So in terms of doing something now, we absolutely agree. This is let's find whatever tools we can put in the toolbox kind of situation to get providers into this state to be providing care on the ground. I think in terms of adopting something that just Wyoming does, I wouldn't say no to that conversation at all. I would have questions immediately, just off the cuff, or in terms of administration, because that was a big conversation we had with the legislation last year when we were preparing it for that reciprocity pieces. Is what does this look like to administer? How does this affect the board? Is it time effective? Because realizing that we only have so many resources. Saying that, I do think there's probably a way forward on that. I do not envision this being a 10-year fight. What we are hearing nationally and what we are seeing is that interstate compacts across the board, not just for mental health licensing, that's the way everybody is going. And so I think that this is going to be maybe a 2-year process to get the compact, get enough states, get the commission set up and get it moving forward. Senator, I wish that I had the $1 million answer of how to put more providers on the ground today. But even as we know, if we worked on a bill and brought it next session, which I'd be happy to work on and look at, we wouldn't be providing another tool in the toolbox until summer of 2023 to get that up and going. So, Senator, I don't know if that answers your question, but overall, I'm a pretty much any tools we can put in the toolbox kind of person in terms of workforce shortage. And I would say that the legislation that we passed last year, specific to some of the issues that had been discussed for a couple of years that you mentioned, to me, that was a first step in trying to move forward that conversation and shore up some opportunities to bring more of those type providers in the state as well.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Somerville. Our tires are beginning to spin in the mud a little bit. I want to kind of pick up the pace here a little bit if we can. Let's move to the online testimony from the military person.
Mr. Chairman, we have a couple online. If they can turn on their video and they are ready.
Okay, we got rid of that horrible noise. Okay, go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead and introduce yourself and testify.
Good morning, Chair Baldwin and members of the committee. My name is Tammy Perot, and I am the Northwest Regional Liaison for the Defense State Liaison Office, working under the direction of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Military, Community, and Family Policy. In simple terms, I'm staff for the Pentagon. I'd like to give a special shout out to Senator McEwen, a fellow airborne soldier, and continue with my testimony that the Department of Defense is grateful for the opportunity to support the policy changes proposed in Senate File 54, the Counseling Compact, which addresses licensing issues affecting our service members and their families. The purpose of this compact is to facilitate the interstate practice of counseling with the goal of improving public access to mental health services while preserving the regulatory authority of the states to protect public health and safety through the current system of state licensure. What I want to highlight is that the secretaries of the military departments have made the importance of military spouse licensure explicitly clear as they consider the availability of licensing reciprocity and portability when evaluating future basing or mission alternatives. This is a serious issue for our military families. It's a serious quality of life issue, and we look at it when we are making those basing and strategic decisions. This consideration was codified by Congress as a requirement in the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act. As has already been mentioned, military spouses are a cross-section of the American population, although a greater percentage of them are licensed occupations than their civilian counterparts. 34% of military spouses require a license in order to maintain their occupation. Many states, including Wyoming, have interstate compacts, which establish a common understanding of competency and its measurement within the occupation to resolve the interstate issue of license portability. We appreciate Wyoming's previous adoption of the Nurse Licensure Compact, the Emergency Medical Services Compact, and the Speech Pathology Audiology Compact. Frequent moves and cumbersome licensing and certification requirements limit career options for our military spouses, and removing these barriers, creating portability and reciprocity in licensure requirements facilitates placement opportunities that can help military families' financial stability, speed the assimilation of a family into its new location, and create a desirable new employee pool for a state. We appreciate the opportunity to support the policies outlined in Senate File 54 introduced this session, and are grateful to Senator Pappas for sponsoring this important legislation. I'd like to mention just a couple of things that have been discussed. One is that a compact will be up and running as soon as I believe 10 states are reached. So we don't have to wait several years for this compact to get started. As soon as we reach 10 states, which is expected to be in this year, this compact will be functional, and you will have that portability between those 10 states. Additionally, this body has done exceptional work historically to support our military spouses, and we are grateful for that. The passage of Senate File 18 last year provided exceptional reciprocity for military spouses in the state of Wyoming, and that has become a model for the rest of the nation. Occupational licensure compacts are an additional layer that provides supports to a specific occupation. And as such, we support occupational licensure compacts as the gold standard. These are really the best way for a military spouse to be able to have a license in one state and be able to practice as soon as they arrive on the ground in another state. We support these to the extent that we are working closely with the National Center for Interstate Compacts through a grant and funding model to help encourage more compacts to be established by the occupations. So we are strongly supportive of this process, and we hope that this body will take this seriously and move this piece of legislation forward. I stand for your questions.
Thank you very much. Questions, committee? Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's more for my information other than anything else. Why 10 states? Why not 9? Why not 12? Why not 6?
Yeah.
Where did that number come from, and what does it mean? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Senator McEwen, this is a great question, and I do not have a specific answer as to why 10 states is what the decision process was for the ensuring that the counseling compact was up and running. I believe that that's what they believed was would create the amount of kind of the center of mass to ensure that there was enough people in the compact to be able to transfer licenses and have that portability. It was a sort of a numbers type of issue from my understanding. I can work with the National Center for Interstate Compacts to get a clear answer for you on that, Senator McEwen.
I believe we have the answer in the room. I saw a hand raised, so we'll get that answer here short. Come on up, Senator Pappas. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen. NCIC, the National Center Interstate Compacts, I was an advisory board member on that, and I helped draft some of the compacts. And they vary, and it all depends on the drafting team and the organizations that are pushing for the compact. It's basically just a decision. In some compacts, I've seen them as high as 35. Okay, they could be any number. It's just a number that they feel they can meet the threshold easily, but still have a number of states that they can actually have a decent compact. You wouldn't want to pick 2 states. It would be cost prohibitive as well, because you need a lot of states to help the commission, support the cost of the commission. But if you set 35 or 40 or even 50, all the states, it may be a high bar and you'll never get there. So the number, while not arbitrary, is subject to however it's drafted initially, based on the organization's idea of how long it'll take for the number of states to come on board.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Follow-up question, Senator McEwen.
So if I understand you right, basically, and I like it if this is the answer, it's the break-even point.
Go ahead, Senator
Sure.
Pappas.
Yeah, pretty much so. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's the break-even point. If they put 35 or 40, it may be years before they got there. So they think 10 is a substantial number of states that they can get the compact going. They're hoping that as time goes on, all 50 states join. But 10 is the kind of minimum critical mass. Yeah, break-even point. I like that.
Okay, further questions for those online? Thank you very much for your testimony. We'll let you move on with your day. I understand we have one more online. Go ahead and let her in, or him in.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Welcome. Go ahead and introduce yourself and testify, please.
Yep, this is Liz Dole Izzo. I am the Wyoming chapter of the National Association of Social Workers. And I met you all on Monday at my first hearing. So I support pretty much everything that has been said by Senator Pappas and by Lindsay and by Tammy. I want to try to keep this quick. I want to address the military issue first, because I'm a weird person. I am a veteran myself, and I married a veteran after I got out of the service and became a social worker while I was married to my husband. So I've been on multiple scenarios in this area. When I moved to Wyoming in 2006, I knew I was coming, and I think I put my reciprocity license renewal, and it took 4 months, which is not bad, by the way. If you compare it to other states, it's not bad. But a couple of the jobs that I was applying for, I was not able to take those jobs because of that delay in my licensure. When I went from Colorado, we were stationed down in Colorado. I was a licensed social worker in Colorado. And when we got stationed in California, the process there was so long, it wasn't even worth me even trying to get licensed. And I hear that a lot. When I was at the hearing on Monday for this committee, the thing I heard over and over again, talking about being able to support mental health care in Wyoming, was we needed to focus on less bureaucracy. And as somebody who has been licensed or attempted to be licensed in different states and Wyoming, that applies to reciprocity. And the compacts will significantly reduce the burden, not only on the paperwork and the time frame, but the anxiety of moving as a military spouse. I also want to, I believe it was Senator Bouchard who was talking about the reciprocity and some of the quibbling that went on between maybe other professionals. NASW is in full support of the Wyoming professional counselors for this compact and for other areas of their practice. But I think what changed was COVID. COVID was and is a game changer. And I think multiple professions within the mental health world stopped quibbling. We can't quibble about minor differences between our professions anymore because the importance of mental health care became so clear that we as professionals, I believe the majority of us said, we're good. I am in support of the counselors being able to bill Medicare. Social workers have had that for a very long time. So I think there's a lot of those areas where it got serious enough that we kind of got over ourselves, is a nice way to say it. The other story I wanted to tell is as a professional. So I took over as the administrator for all behavioral health services with Cheyenne Regional in June of 2019. Our old director left. She was a very popular director. And what ended up happening was almost my entire case management employees followed her to Colorado. I was stuck with one provisionally licensed caseworker and one student intern to do the job of about 4.5 people. Because of the licensure moving, I had to get somebody in Wyoming because I needed help immediately. And we have had experiences when folks from usually Northern Colorado were applying to come into the psychiatric team or behavioral health. The time it took to move their license meant that those people were employed at Cheyenne Regional, but they could not work on their own. And this was before the COVID crisis. I was able to beg a social worker from Casper to drive down to cover my case management team while I was trying to hire people. Reciprocity is something that is good. I'm glad that we have it. And I personally appreciate any work that anybody in this room has done on getting reciprocity. But I think reciprocity is not fine-tuned enough to respond to what happened during COVID and to respond to our needs. The other thing, I know we're focusing on people outside of Wyoming coming into Wyoming, but I think we also need to focus on folks who are in Wyoming who might leave. So I taught at the university in the Division of Social Work for 10 years here. And
I'm going to ask you to wrap up here very shortly. So bring this to
so we have several folks who are educated or from Wyoming who want to serve their communities, but their communities are too small to really afford them the opportunity to work in that field, and they leave to go to other states. I know that there are many social workers who have left. If this was an opportunity that they could also provide care via telehealth to their own home communities, they would do it. This is the wave of the future. This is where we're going. And I believe that Wyoming needs to lead in the mechanisms that are going forward in every profession rather than bring it home and stay isolated to just Wyoming. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Questions, committee? Thank you very much for your testimony. We're going to move back into the room. I would caution those who are going to testify. If we heard it before, paraphrase so we can keep moving on. We have a lot ahead of us. So go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, Cheryl Fullen, Wyoming Association of Addictions Professionals, and also a private provider in Rawlins. And my testimony will be very brief. We are in support of anything that brings competent, capable, experienced individuals into the mental health and addictions fields in Wyoming. We also, and I wanted to clarify what Ms. Semenow had said, the National Association of Addictions Professionals, NADAC, does not plan on a compact because our designations are all national. It requires a national test. And it requires consistency across the United States. So no matter what a licensure requirement is within a certain state, our designations are consistent. So it doesn't matter whether a compact is in place or not, our specific designations are there, and standards have been created for from SAMHSA, the National Agency on Substance Abuse and Mental Health Practices, and our own association. And while we also speak to our military spouses, we have a fluid set of industry in oil and gas. I'm a trailing spouse. And thanks to some changes at our board, I was finally able to be licensed rather quickly after a 3-year scenario. But there are many trailing spouses in multiple industries, healthcare, and specifically oil and gas. So with that, I stand for any questions.
Questions, committee? Seeing no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further brief testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Very briefly, Hollis Hackman, Wyoming Psychological Association. We are not in opposition to this compact bill, and I would just make the comment that it's my personal opinion that my own profession kind of missed the boat on the whole compact thing when it was rolled out here just a few years ago. And to Senator Bouchard's concern about how long this might take, if we would have got on board just a couple of years ago, we could have been part of the development of the rules and the regs. I mean, if you're one of the early groups that gets on board, you have that ability. To date, now 2 years later, there are 28 states that have joined the compact for psychology, and there's 10 states with pending legislation. So I just wanted to give you an idea of how rapidly this is happening.
Questions, committee?
Questions?
No questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Hackman. Further comments before I close public? Nobody else online? Okay, let's close public comment, please. Committee, do I have a desire or a move? Somebody want to move the bill? I'll move the bill. Bill moved by Senator McEwen. Do we have a second? Second by Senator Furphy. Okay, hang around. Don't run away, Senator Pappas. Stay and work with us. We're not going to go through this page by page, obviously, because it's important that the compact requires the language does have to stay the same as Senator Pappas reviewed us. If you change it, it negates it. So questions or comments, committee? Suggestions for amendments? Although it's not really possible, except for maybe the effective date. No questions or comments? Okay, let's take a vote.
Mr. Chairman, this is for Senate File 54. Senator Bouchard. Senator Furphy. Senator Hutchings. Senator McEwen. Chairman Baldwin. 4 ayes, 1 excused.
Thank you very much, Senator Pappas.
Thank you, committee. Appreciate it.
We'll look forward to the floor presentation. Okay, let's move on to our next bill. Senator Salazar, step forward, please. Excuse me? Not for this one. For this one, she did. Okay, before we get started here, we have several people who are wanting to testify on this, as we always do. This is a bill that we heard similar or very similar to last year. When we go to public comment, in order to make sure we get to work this bill and do something with the bill before we end our committee meeting, we're going to limit testimony to 2 minutes. And I would, of course, ask Senator Salazar, it's his bill, if he would approve that. And I would tell everyone who testifies that if somebody else has said it before you, try to limit it. You can say, I agree, but don't tie up somebody else's 2 minutes who may have something new for us. Now that I've got that all out and I'm out of wind, Senator Salazar, please present your bill, Senate File 83, prohibiting chemical abortions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, it's a privilege to be before your committee. You have a reputation, Mr. Chairman, for fairness, particularly when it comes to issues such as this. And so I can not think of a better committee that this come before. I'm going to be very brief. I will keep it under 5 minutes because I know each of you have read this short bill and probably have a definitive decision that you've already made on it. I will tell you at the very outset that during the introduction of this bill, 25 votes in favor. I will tell you that in states such as South Dakota, the House has already passed a similar bill. And I understand that Arizona and Alabama are also, this very similar bill is before them. Mr. Chairman, very briefly, the reason that this bill is before you is because I believe that abortion is the taking of human life. And this bill, as you said, Mr. Chairman, was before you last year. What this bill simply does, Mr. Chairman, is it prohibits 5 drugs for the sole purpose of abortion to be prevented for its use in the state of Wyoming. If you look at page, if you go through the bill, if I can very briefly go through the bill, if you look specifically at page 2, the bill clearly states that there are exceptions to the use of these specific drugs. One is obviously, if you look at line 7, number B, the prohibition in subsection shall not apply to contraception agents, miscarriage, or protection of imminent peril of the life of the mother. Page 3, if you look at the penalties of this, as you remember, Mr. Chairman, last year, the criminal penalty was a felony. And because of discussions on the floor last year, and I wanted it to be a reasonable approach, we changed that from a felony to a misdemeanor, and I've kept that same penalty in this bill for this year. The fine is not to exceed $9,000. Let me address that specifically. The only way to deter out-of-state physicians and mail order pharmacies in places like New York and California from sending these types of pills into the state of Wyoming is to make the cost of doing business expensive. The penalties must be a real deterrent. There must be a heavy fine, and that's why we have $9,000 as the penalty. Page 4, Mr. Chairman, has the specific 5 chemicals that we outlaw in this bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, again, I'm brief because you've seen this bill last year. It's a 4-page bill. You all know what it does. I will simply end by saying this, and I said it on the floor of the Senate. I'll say it again. Pro-life Wyoming wants this bill. Pro-life organizations want this bill this year. And it was made very clear to me by both that they want votes on this bill. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I stand for any questions. As you say, I know there are plenty of people who wish to testify, and I don't want to take any more time from them. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Questions, committee? See none.
Thank you.
Go a little more comfortable chairs. And here's what we're going to do this morning. If you remember the last committee meeting, we did 2 pro, 2 con, et cetera. We're going to do 3 pro, 3 con, and then we're going to go online. So we're going to start in the room with first 3 testimonies in favor of the bill. If we could, please. Go ahead and more than one come up at a time if you want. We have 4 seats. They are softer than the seats you're sitting in, so please come forward. Introduce yourselves and go ahead and testify to the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name is Brooke Faulkner.
Is the mic on? I'm sorry. And talk real close to the mic. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good morning. My name is Brooke Faulkner, and I am the Rocky Mountain Regional Coordinator with Students for Life Action. Students for Life Action is a 501c4 along with its 501c3 sister, Students for Life of America, and we make up the nation's largest pro-life youth organization. Together, the organizations work to end abortion, the human rights issue of our day. We have more than 1,250 groups on middle, high school, college, university, medical, and law school campuses in all 50 states. I stand before you today representing our Wyoming student groups and pro-life citizens whom I serve throughout the state of Wyoming to urge you to support SF 83, which would protect the lives of your constituents, born and preborn, by banning deadly chemical abortion pills. Chemical abortion pills are dangerous to women and lethal to babies. They end the life of a preborn child and are even more dangerous to women than surgical abortion, causing 4 times more complications. The pills cause infertility if used improperly and can even be slipped into the drinks of pregnant women. Widespread distribution of the pills will likely result in an increased abuse and sex trafficking of women. Corporate abortion groups have set up authorization in all 50 states that would make it possible to bring deadly chemical abortion pills to underage girls across the nation online with just a few clicks, confidentially with no safeguards or follow-up care for their new abortion by Amazon world. While a few states have some in-person requirements in place, the lack of strong laws across the country empower corporate abortion interests to cheaply dispense the pills everywhere, skirting state laws which focus enforcement on licensing and regulatory requirements of in-state providers. The real solution is heavy fines to target out-of-state pill pushers, as well as those dispensing physicians who Zoom briefly with a woman, then ship her death by mail. Again, simply regulating this exploitative system isn't enough. These pills instead should be banned, as the legislation before you does. Again, I ask you to support Senator Salazar's chemical abortion ban, SF 83, as women deserve better than the violence of abortion. Wyoming can lead the way by banning chemical abortion and make a huge step towards making Wyoming abortion free. Thank you for your
very much.
time.
Thank you. Questions for Brooke, committee? No questions. Thank you very much, Brooke. I think they're going to arm wrestle to see who goes next. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Deacon Mike Lehman, representing the Catholic Diocese of Cheyenne. I was thinking this morning in preparing to come across the hall on these pro-life bills that through the years I've heard good testimony actually on both sides of the question. These questions about the importance of individual freedom and the balance of responsibility, understanding limits of government, but also government responsibility. And I've learned a lot over the years from my friends on the other side of this question, who've done a tremendous job of highlighting the plight of vulnerable women who many times find themselves in very difficult situations, maybe not supported by their partners or their parents. Some cases, maybe even shunned by their church communities for being pregnant out of wedlock. This is an important perspective, and it's created much empathy on the part of us all, I believe. But what my friends on the other side seem to not yet at least be able to understand is that the more empathy they create on this topic, the more empathy we have for the other person in the picture, the one who is even more vulnerable and dependent, the one who so many refuse to even acknowledge. There was a question on the other side of the hallway about the numbers within the state. We keep revisiting this question. To me, that's been a point of emphasis that I would like to highlight. We really don't know. I feel like what I've learned is there's very little oversight. We've had providers in the state in the past who have acknowledged they just don't feel like they have to comply with the laws passed by this body. And to me, that is troublesome. We had that reporting requirement bill that passed. And the word was that we assume it's working because some abortions are being reported, but that was kind of a highlight to me, not understanding how that process worked. So that is a question that, another question, I guess, that concerns me. There's also the argument that, pro-lifers were pushing our religious beliefs on other people. Even though there are people from various religious beliefs and no religions at all who are testifying on the pro-life case. For me, was I timed and didn't know it? Oh, okay. With that, I would stand for any questions.
I tried to put pause before I got to the noise, so you wouldn't have to hear that.
Okay.
Okay, questions, committee? Commissioner Lehman? No questions. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, honorable senators. My name is Steve Milia, resident here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I would speak in favor of this bill, and I stand 100% behind Honorable Senator Salazar and the other two speakers here. And I would say that any abortion, as Senator Salazar had mentioned, is taking up a human life. There's a lot of people that say, oh, it's just a fetus. Well, if you look it up, fetus is the Latin term for little one, offspring, baby. And I think of the child in the womb as a womb developing child, not a fetus. And in my experience as a teacher, there was a young man that was about 16 years old. He was conceived in rape. His mother was 15. And if she had had the opportunity to abort, as she did with these chemical pills, he would not be here. Also, my wife we've had 4 pregnancies. Our second daughter was born 4 months early. If she had known or had this opportunity, then I would have had a dead daughter because she could have aborted our child, which she was totally pro-life. Our third daughter, during the pregnancy, the doctor said, well, for this genetic test, we think that she's going to have a lot of genetic abnormalities. We suggest that you abort. That was not favorable of us, but she was perfectly fine. So I now have 2 live daughters instead of 2 dead daughters. And so if the chemical abortions were available at that time, then the opportunity would have been there. We would not have taken them. But the young man that I had spoken about, his mother could have had this opportunity, but she chose to take him to term, and he would have not been here. But he was one of the most mature and intelligent students that I've had. And so I stand with my colleagues and with Senator Salazar, and thank him for bringing this bill forward. And I ask for your aye vote on this.
Thank you. Questions, committee? No questions. Thank you very much. Do I have 3 people in the room who wish to speak against? Or 1 or 2, however many we got, come on forward. Welcome to Labor and Health. Introduce yourself and present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, for this time to speak. I speak on my behalf as a Wyoming woman who this bill targets. As you likely know, this bill would ban even the few abortions that happen in this state by prohibiting a safe drug that was approved by the FDA over 20 years ago, and therefore has had significant testing and regulatory oversight. Statistically, using these drugs to end a pregnancy is safer than bringing a pregnancy to term. This bill does not support me or other women and families in our state. I want to be able to access the best medical care possible should I need it, and this bill prohibits that. I know that many of you value your bodily autonomy from your statements on vaccines. This bill would remove my ability to have bodily autonomy in our great state. Please help me feel safe and welcome in the state I love so much by voting no. Thank you. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Questions, committee? Thank you very much for your testimony. Anyone else in the room opposed to the bill? Oh, you'll get your turn, sir. Okay. Welcome, Ms. Bush. Introduce yourself and go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Sheila Bush with the Wyoming Medical Society. I do believe we have a few physicians online that I was going to maybe testify after, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity here. The Medical Society, as you all know, does not have a position on the procedure of abortion, and we want to make that clear. However, we do want to bring a couple of points to your attention inside of this bill. We believe that this bill, as written, has a very chilling effect on the manufacturing, sale, possession of these drugs, which are used in a lot of situations that have nothing to do with elective abortion. And so the physicians online, I think, and Senator Baldwin can speak to the ways we do use, or I don't, but physicians and PAs use these medications to help women. And the bill attempts, I think, to make an exception for miscarriage. However, that is not a medical term. And so I think there's a lot of confusion and question as to what's actually protected. If a woman has a natural miscarriage, as laymen refer to it, it's actually called a spontaneous abortion. And if that process at any point that's happening naturally in her body doesn't go the way it needs to, they need access to these medications to help save her life, often from infection or other conditions. And I'll stop there because we're right at the edge of my knowledge. But I think that if we're not very careful with these kinds of bills, we can miss, I think, the intention, which is that
Is that coming online, or where's our noise coming from? And someone online has a mic open. Please mute yourself.
She had an abortion. Also had an untimely child. And to see the both.
Go ahead and proceed. You got 20 seconds left.
okay. I've lost my train of thought a bit, sir. So I think we can have a policy conversation, and it is your jobs to decide what should be legal and what should not be in the state. And I respect that. I do think that it's the job to bring some expertise and information when the language gets written in a way that captures far more than I think is the intent. And so separate from the policy decision in front of you today, I'd love the opportunity to do a little bit of tweaking or amending of the language. It's not a miscarriage, it's a spontaneous abortion. And those exemptions need to be very clear for when these medications can be safely used outside of what I believe everyone thinks is in question today, and in medical treatment that have nothing to do with an elective abortion, but instead have to do with really caring for a mother in situations where they really need access to those medications.
Thank you. Questions from Ms. Bush? Senator McEwen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the bill, it clearly states drugs can't be used for specific purposes. It doesn't say they can't be used to treat other things. So I find it kind of funny how sometimes as we go through this process, we take language that's quite clear and sort of twist it into something that may or may not happen. It would be akin to saying, if we pass this bill, a meteorite might hit the earth tomorrow. I mean, that's a big stretch, but at the end of the day, it doesn't prohibit the drugs. It prohibits the drugs for a specific use. So I'm going to ask you, do you really believe this is going to have a chilling effect on using these drugs somewhere else? Because earlier I heard testimony, well, the doctors aren't even going to listen anyway. So as I juggle those two statements, I'm somewhere in the middle trying to figure out what's the truth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms.
Mr.
Bush,
Chairman.
go ahead, ma'am.
I think all of us read legislation through the filters with which we're most familiar. And so if you're a physician practicing medicine and you're seeking to comply with the law, which our members do, I represent over 1,000 physicians and PAs in the state. They're very concerned with complying with the law, evidenced by the emails and phone calls we get every session on how they can comply. If they were going to ignore that, they wouldn't call us or seek clarification. It does say this section prohibits the sale, use, prescription, or administration. It goes on to say before conception or before pregnancy, conventional medical testing. I think you have to be really careful in how this will all be interpreted. And I understand that you interpret it as being very clear Everyone doesn't. And so I think that bringing clarity can't ever be bad. We can have disagreements about a lot of things, but I think the clarity is really important. I think there's more confusion in the bill that I didn't have time to get to, but imminent harm is not defined. Who decides what's imminent? I think these are questions that warrant and merit conversation. I understand there are strong feelings and high emotions around the question presented in the bill, and I'm honestly not here to talk about that piece. I'm here to talk about what the 4 pages do and what they mean, and whether they will have a chilling effect or not. We can speculate all day, whether you believe that it won't and I believe that it will. I think the question remains, and we have to be really thoughtful about how we make this as clear as possible so that it achieves what it is the committee or the legislature wants it to achieve, but doesn't go beyond that to harm people that aren't inside of your intention.
Thank you. Further questions, Gwen? Thank you, Ms. Bush. Okay, let's move online if we can, please. If we have 3 supporting, and I would remind those who want to testify that we do have a 2-minute time limit. And give us new information. If you got old information, keep it very brief if you could, please. Go ahead and admit 3 and more.
Mr. Chairman, I admitted everyone with their hand raised just because I don't know if they're for or against.
Okay, we'll take the hand raise.
And Senator Hutchings is fine.
Senator Hutchings, is that what oh, she's not there yet. We'll look at her in a minute. I'm assuming this is from a doctor's office. Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead and testify.
Hi. So my name is Dr. Katie Noyes. I'm a family medicine doc in Jackson, Wyoming. And I serve patients in.
Hold on 1 second, doctor. Someone else online is unmuted and they're writing over the top of everything.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Everyone else, please mute. While we get this testimony. When it comes your turn, we'll get you on. Go ahead, doctor.
I provide patient care to patients in Teton, Sublette, Fremont, Lincoln, Sweetwater Park, and Albany counties. I'm a family doc. I take care of men, women, children, pregnant women, newborns in the hospital, and elderly folks as well. Abortion care is a small sliver of my work, but a very important part of my work. Just recently, a woman named Sarah walked into my office, name not real, early 20s. She had just been to the emergency room with severe abdominal pain, and at the time discovered that she was pregnant. She was on oral contraception pills, had never missed a pill. She was in an unsupportive, emotionally abusive relationship. She was on medications for mental health disorders, and she had cutting scars all over her body. She did not want to be pregnant. She did not want to become a parent at this time in her life. She did not want to carry the pregnancy to term and pursue adoption. We spent a lot of time fleshing out what was best for her, what was best for her family, what was best for this situation. And she elected to end her pregnancy. My job as a physician was not to decide for her. My job was not to tell her what she was doing was right or wrong. My job was to tell her her options and help her make the decision that's best for her. Very shortly after, a woman comes in named Maria. She's in her early 40s. She has several children and recently became a grandmother. And she became pregnant and she wasn't sure what she wanted to do. So we had a long conversation, decided that she needed more time to decide. And a week later decided that she wanted to keep her pregnancy and is scheduled for upcoming obstetrical care. So again, my job as a physician is not a decision maker. I'm an advocate, I'm an educator, and that sacred space for patients to ask their questions and do what's best for them need not be interfered with by the state of Wyoming. This is
10 seconds. You need to start it up, please.
Okay. This law is just a clear example of government interference in patient healthcare decisions. It's a clear government interference in my ability to do a good job. These are FDA approved medications for a safe legal procedure. And it is actually something that clearly violates the Wyoming Constitution, which has a clause in Article 1, Section 38.
Okay.
A competent adult can have their own right to health care.
Time is up. Do you want to put a couple final words? I'm sorry, but go ahead and wrap it, please.
Yeah. So I would just check the Constitution, check infringement and healthcare decisions. This will only harm Wyoming women. It will not stop abortions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much for coming and testifying this morning. We appreciate it. I believe I recognize another physician. Well, I can't say the word, but I know who you are. Go ahead and introduce yourself and please address the committee.
Thank you, Chairman. Renee Hinkle, OBGYN, Cheyenne, Wyoming for 23 years. I'd like to, first of all, say I am very much opposed to this bill for the same reasons that the other people in opposition are. It does go against the Wyoming Constitution, our ability to choose our own healthcare with our physicians. I would also ask you to please listen to how people rephrase their testimony. This is the safest procedure for abortion that can be done. If this passes, there will be no abortions in Wyoming, which I know what most people want. However, it will be done in an unconstitutional way. It does not cause infertility. This is a safe procedure. These are safe medications. They've been proven by the FDA. They are safe for women. It's safer than having a pregnancy. It's safer than all the complications that come with any kind of pregnancy. These medications cannot be given without a script, no matter where the person is, no matter who they get the medications from. This medication cannot be given without approval by a physician, a Wyoming physician, if they're in the state of Wyoming. So these things are false. You need to make sure that the testimony you're listening to, or you can at least discern that. My main problem with this bill is that we use everything except for RU 486. All those other medications that are listed, we use for other medical reasons. And it will be difficult for us to get those because pharmacies, pharmacists, people are not going to be willing to get those medications in the state if there's a possibility that they could be accused of using them for abortion, even if they're not being used for elective abortion. We use spontaneous miscarriage, spontaneous abortion, we use missed abortion, we use all these terms interchangeably, and people without knowledge are not going to be aware of that, and we're not going to be able to get these medications, and that will affect the safe care of other women in the state of Wyoming. We use these for miscarriage. It stops bleeding. It keeps people from having blood transfusions. It keeps people from dying of blood loss. So there are many other reasons for using these medications, and having the government make a decision on for a political reason is not a reason to put other women in Wyoming at risk.
You must have known right when your 2 minutes ran up. Thank you, doctor. Any questions for the doctor? Senator McEwen, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're painting this as unconstitutional with a broad brush. This is unconstitutional because of your definition of life. I heard the word autonomous. There's two living forces involved in this, no matter how you define it. And the Wyoming Constitution clearly says your rights can infringe upon somebody else's rights. So I would argue that a developing baby has the same constitutional protection as the mother. And my second point is, I don't believe the big bad boogeyman's going to avoid these prescriptions from being used in a legal manner. We have multiple cases where that happens today. So I would ask you if you at least agree with me on the constitutional part being on how you define whether it's one or two people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Doctor, go ahead, please.
Chairman, Senator McEwen. I don't agree with you. I think this is, the Wyoming Constitution says that an adult person has the ability to make health decisions for themselves and any of their offspring. So this is a decision that a woman is allowed to make with the with their physician in a private manner. And this should have nothing to do with the state. And also, along your other question, are there other drugs that the state outlaws for medical use?
Okay, I think what we do is we have an agreement to disagree here. Go ahead, Senator Bouchard, you have a question for the doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Addressing the Constitution, I was the guy that actually was involved on the ground during that time. And that discussion did come up. But when we look at the clear, what you said specifically, a parent could make a decision for their offspring. I don't know anywhere in the Constitution where it says you could kill your offspring. And so that's what I'm seeing here. As far as drug use, this bill clearly says what we're doing here. And it's wrong to cloud this issue and make this about something else, because we have drugs. I mean, if you take it, what happened with COVID, I didn't hear anybody. We have drugs that we've used across the aisle on issues. And it seems that I heard the same things from the doctors that would be pro-abort, is we don't even care about saving lives and doing early treatment for people that had COVID. So I'm feeling like we're just trying to cloud this thing. This issue is really clear here. This is about saving babies' lives. That's what this is about.
Committee, I have a caution you. We need to ask questions. Commentary safe for the floor, please. Let's ask questions of the presenters. Further questions for the doctor? Seeing none. I believe Dr. Anthony. I'm sorry, it's hard to read the name across the room here. Dr. Anthony, go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you perfect, and we can see your yellow hand, and we can see you. Go ahead and testify, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Senate Labor and Health Committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment regarding Senate File 83, prohibiting chemical abortions.
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, I am so sorry. My name is Jovanina Anthony. I am a practicing gynecologist in Jackson, Wyoming. And I've been practicing gynecology for 30 years. I do ask the committee to vote no on this Senate file. And I have some issues specifically with some of the wording, and I'll stick to that aspect of the bill. I think a lot of the other presenters have made a excellent argument for the fact that this is an intrusion by the state of the physician-patient relationship. I find that the wording is vague and troubling, and this is common in scenarios where the state tries to legislate medical care. In Section 1B, subsection 3 of Senate File 83, an exception to providing a chemical abortion can be justified if, quote, treatment is necessary to protect a woman from imminent peril that substantially endangers her life, according to appropriate medical judgment, unquote. And once again, quote, imminent peril refers exclusively to a physical and not mental condition, unquote. My concern is, what exactly is imminent peril? And I can give you a quick patient example. A pregnant woman in Western Wyoming came to me with a heart condition. This is called pulmonary hypertension. Her cardiologist at the University of Utah informed her that her risk of dying if she carried the pregnancy to term is approximately 40%. With medical abortion, as opposed to a surgical abortion, she would also avoid the cardiac risks of anesthesia. One could invert this and say that her odds of surviving the pregnancy are 60%. But is this imminent peril? Is 60% pretty good odds of surviving? I mean, this is a patient who did not want to end the pregnancy, yet I will never forget her partner pleading with her in the exam room and stating to her, "We cannot lose you." This couple has 2 other children. So this is just a great example of the question of who decides what exactly is imminent peril. She was not in imminent danger of dying. And if I yes.
I'm trying to think about 15 to 20 seconds left. If you can
Got
bring
it.
a point. Thank
Got
you.
it. If I recommend she aborts, and this is my medical judgment, if the state of Wyoming disagrees with that, am I subject to a prison sentence or liable if I give that patient my honest medical advice? How do I know if I'm breaking the law? So the imminent peril aspect of this bill is super concerning, and I would ask the committee to consider that seriously. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony. Questions, committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much. So let's come back to the room. Doesn't matter whether you're for or against. Let's come on up. Fill 3 seats, 4 seats. And I would remind the committee and the public, be kind to one another. Or you're doing very well. There's a gold star for you. Start in whichever order you'd like. Representative, go ahead, sir. Oh, he's deferring. Okay, we're going to go to the opposite end of the lake.
My name is Susan Graham. I live here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I lived for 30 years in Casper. So although not a native of Wyoming, I definitely call Wyoming home. So do 6 of my 7 children. I can only say, when we don't embrace with empathy the lives of the least, that affects society as a whole. I have empathy for women who are in imminent peril. Stepping out of bed in the morning is imminent peril. We risk that the miracle of life and what it takes to become pregnant can be wiped out just because we can, and a doctor says you should, needs to be regulated by lawmakers. I am for and in favor of Senator Salazar's bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hello, this is Melody Nielsen. I have lived in Germany now since 2012. I was previously a teacher in Germany. And before that, I was in Laramie where I had a child. I was married to a policeman. We had a child. I had blood clot, a bad blood clot in my leg, and I had to keep it up and I had to take medicine and I had a choice. My choice was I was going to have my child. My child today is a paramedic here in Cheyenne, senior paramedic who has delivered many babies, who has saved many lives. And for that, I am thankful that I made that choice. I am also for Salazar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe you win the prize for coming the furthest from Germany to testify. Thank you very much. Don't arm wrestle, gentlemen. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I will not do that. I hate to embarrass myself by losing an arm wrestling contest. Trying to be uncharacteristically brief, Brett Mullane, Wyoming Farm Bureau, for reasons that have already been stated. My organization stands firmly behind this bill, sitting in support, and I would sit for any questions the committee may have for me.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and get representatives' testimony. We'll ask questions of all 4 if we have any. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Chip Nyman, House District 1. I do also sit in full support of this legislation. And, you know, as I've listened to this conversation, it's intriguing to me that it really does boil down to the recognition of either that is a human being or it is not. There was even some talk in here about I want to feel safe. I think that would be exactly the same conversation that person within that womb would love to be able to share if they had the opportunity. My opinion on this is I believe that our statutes definitely declare that murder is wrong. And so how is murder outside of the womb wrong and murder within the womb would be all right? Another issue that I have is that I believe that our citizens of Wyoming should feel just as safe inside the womb as they do outside of it. and have that opportunity to express and to live with the rights that we're all endowed. And that is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I believe that our founders had it in very good order in the fact that they said liberty second. But in order to enjoy liberty, we must first have life. And I believe it is our responsibility to provide that protection for that life. It's kind of interesting to me that this morning I just purchased a fairly new vehicle. And I didn't know what this was when I first got in it, and I turned the key on and I used it. And then when I stopped the vehicle, I got out of it and there was an alarm chiming. And I had to look, and there's a little display on there, and it said, "Have you checked the back seat?" I think it is interesting that even automakers recognize life. There's a car seat there with an empty car seat on the display. And it's ironic too that that same child that we would send somebody to jail for killing or leaving in a vehicle unattended that would die in those circumstances can actually in our nation be murdered right up to the point of delivery. I hate to see automakers get it better than lawmakers. Let's do our job to protect that opportunity for that human being to come to fruition. Viability and sustainability are two very different things. That's a human being and they're developing, and it has a right to life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Questions for any of the floor committee? Senator McEwen.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to shift gears for a minute, probably get myself in trouble. What part of Germany?
Baumholder was the Air Force Base, Army base.
I know it well.
You
I
do.
was stationed in, well, I was actually in Gundelsheim, but Bamberg.
Yeah, Bamberg. Yeah, yeah.
Thank
I
you,
was
ma'am.
there for 24 years, so
I
I
think at
learned
this
a
point
lot.
you should
yeah.
both speak German, and we'll have no idea what you're saying.
Ein Bier, bitte.
Ich du auch.
We'll have a translator online next meeting. Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else online who wishes to testify?
Mr. Chairman, we do. We have Marty Halverson.
Okay.
So she's in if she just turns on her video and unmutes herself or unmutes herself. Sorry.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. How are you today?
We're doing great. We're sorry we can't see you, Ms. Halverson, but go ahead and testify, please.
Thank you very much. I'm representing tens of thousands of pro-life Wyoming residents this morning.
Ms.
And
Halverson, can you introduce yourself for us one more time?
I'm so sorry. My name is Marty Halverson. I live in Etna, Wyoming, and I am president of Wyoming Right to Life. During discussions on this bill, we've heard a lot of talk about abortion is between a woman and her doctor. Well, I would ask, where is the doctor with the Biden administration making available these abortifacients online via mail? Someone put it very well, abortion by Amazon. There is not a doctor anywhere near this decision. Please, please support this bill. Let Wyoming be a sanctuary state as far as these horrific medications that kill babies and endanger women. I stand in strong support of Senate File 83 and urge your aye votes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Halverson. I should note, everyone here in the room should recognize that that was a very shortest testimony by former Representative Halverson. She did it in 30 seconds. So thank you, Ms. Halverson. There's no questions for you.
Thank you.
Next, and I apologize and I don't remember your name and I can't read it on the screen, but go ahead and testify, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. This is Wendy Volk from here in Cheyenne.
Good morning.
I'm speaking in opposition to Senate File 83. I grew up here in Wyoming. I completed my college degree and pursued a banking and financial career in Texas, California, and Hong Kong. As a single professional, I chose to return to Wyoming in 1994 and continue my career in commercial and residential real estate. I met my future husband and we started a family. One of the reasons that I moved back to Wyoming is I've always been proud of our Wyoming Constitution, Article 1, Section 38. that says that each competent Wyoming adult shall have the right to make his or her own healthcare decisions. And the state of Wyoming shall act to preserve these rights from undue governmental infringement. What is right for you may not be right for me. What is right for me may not be right for you. But what is not right is for either of us to be stripped of the freedom to choose what is right for ourselves. I have advocated and promoted a common sense approach to reproductive health and well-being based on respect for each individual's right to make informed, independent decisions about health, sex, and family planning. I support an individual's right to choose from a full range of reproductive health care options. I do not wish to see this healthcare option being removed for Wyoming women. If a Wyoming woman cannot make her reproductive decisions, she cannot control anything in her life. Throughout my life, I'm very thankful to be allowed to make the personal and sometimes extremely difficult medical decisions in consultation with my trusted physician based on my personal circumstances without political interference. Wyoming's women's reproductive health care rights are under attack. This is not the legacy that Wyoming wants to see happen. This proposed legislation must not move forward. Senate File 83 represents direct political interference in a person's healthcare decisions. I expect our Wyoming elected officials to preserve these rights from undue governmental infringement. The ability to access this essential healthcare should not be taken away from me or any other person in Wyoming. Please vote no on Senate File 83. It is unnecessary. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions, committee? Senator McGillen, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We keep throwing the Constitution around. So my question is, if we go to Article 1, Section 38, have you read Section C, Paragraph C? That says the legislature may determine reasonable and necessary restrictions on the rights granted under this section to protect health and general welfare of people or to accomplish the other purposes set forth in the Wyoming Constitution. So we go back to, this is just a question of whether you believe a fetus or a baby in a womb is actually a live human being or something that can be thrown away. So I'm asking you, do you believe it's a live human being, ma'am?
Go ahead, Wendy.
Senator, through you, as a woman, I believe that no other person should be making a medical decision for me. And this is a drug that would be used during the first 10 weeks of a pregnancy. And that is not a fully formed human being. That is an early stage of an embryo. And that is why I want to see this continue to be an option, is if we take this away, what Wyoming women might do is look to unsafe, unsupervised medical decisions for themselves. That we don't want to see back alley abortions. We don't want to see women taking over-the-counter drugs that would be an unsafe way to terminate a pregnancy. We don't want to go there. We want to have them be able to work with their medical professional here in Wyoming and seek proper care. We can't ever put ourselves in another person's shoes. If I were raped, if I was a victim of incest, if there was any number of circumstances, I should not have to get permission from the legislature on what I can do going forward. I should not be punished by being the victim of incest or rape or any number of circumstances. I could also be on normal antibiotics that can cancel out my birth control, and I could become pregnant, and I'm not in a position to be able to carry that pregnancy healthy for myself or for that child. So after 10 weeks, I think we're talking about something very different, but this is just a drug that is used during the first 10 weeks of a woman's pregnancy.
Thank you, Wendy. Further questions, committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much for coming to testify this morning. Do we have further testimony in the room? Seeing none, do we have further testimony online?
Mr. Chairman, we have a Kathleen online with her hand raised.
Kathleen? I can't see you, Kathleen. Can you hear us?
She needs to unmute herself.
Hello, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Very good. You're unmuted now. Go ahead, Kathleen, and testify, please.
Oh, thank you. This is my very first time doing this stuff, so I apologize. And I thank you for taking my call. I do have something to say in regarding this bill. I am in favor of it, and I'm hoping that it will be followed through. I've been listening to different explanations about safety, and I was just gathering information once again from various organizations that are keeping data. And the um, chemical aborticants are not safe. I mean, there are serious side effects, and many women have the numbers. I don't have some numbers. Oh, maybe I can do that. I'm a little bit nervous. Sorry. Cases with any adverse event: 1,445, average 289 a year. Hospitalized, including deaths, 273, average 55 a year. This is over a 5-year span, and the data was taken from organizations such as Live Action and Operation Rescue, who deal and who offer services and medical treatment to women who have experienced life-threatening consequences from not only cervical abortions, but chemical abortions. And getting back to we don't want any back alley abortions anymore. We want it safe. That thing is what got Roe versus Wade. And how many times has Roe versus Wade changed to the point where it was only supposed to be up to a certain length of time, and now it's up until delivery. So we have to make a decision, a conscious moral decision. Do we support life in all of its stages? That embryo is a human being, and it is growing and developing. So do we support that? And as medical people, I would think that your oath to do no harm would support that. And your direction, not that you're going to tell your patients what to do, but your directions would be to support life, the life of the mother and the life of the child. So I pray that you go forward with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathleen, and you didn't seem nervous. You did very well. And now that you've testified once, we'll hear you again in the future. Questions for Kathleen Committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Kathleen. Do we have further folks who wish to testify? None online in the room? Seeing none. Nobody's jumping up. Let's close the public comment, please. Senator Salazar, would you like to come up to the seat and participate as we work this bill? Committee members, what's your pleasure? Moved by Senator Bouchard, seconded by Senator McEwen. You're too slow. Okay, this is a short bill. We've got time. Let's just work it page by page if we can. Look, go ahead, Senator Bouchard.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say one thing. I was in an orphanage till I was 6 months old. I can't believe we got to this point where it's so easy. People need to slow down and stop taking life so carelessly, saying.
Thank you for that, Senator Bouchard. Okay, let's go back to page 1. Any comments, suggested amendments? Page 1's the easy one. Let's go to page 2. Any comments or suggestions here, committee? I would comment that one of our testifiers talked about the difference, and you've all heard this multiple times in committee, the difference between medical interpretation and medical terminology of miscarriage, spontaneous abortion, etc. At some point in this legislation, some point in our legislative careers, most of you will be here longer than I will probably, or have been, but I think at some point we need to address that and get all the language to come together. I don't think that this bill is probably the place to do it. but that needs to happen. That's just commentary. So further suggestions, comments, committee? None. Let's move to page 3, please. Page 3, suggestions, amendments, comments? See none. Page 4. None. Page 5 is fiscal note. Let's change that. No, don't make it. Okay, so no further comments. Let's go ahead and take roll, please, Mike. And I believe you said Senator Hutchins is with us or not? If she's not, she did leave a
I
proxy.
think
So,
she did leave, yeah, but we do have a proxy.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, this is for Senate File 83. Senator Bouchard. Senator Furphy. Senator Hutchins votes absentee aye. Senator McCune. Chairman Baldwin. Senate File 83, 5 ayes.
Thank you for coming. You're always welcome on our committee, Senator Salazar. Thank you, everyone that testified online and in person. Clearly, we're not going to get to Senate File 114. So unless we have a special meeting, that one is, it remain in the file for now. But thank you very much. That ends our meeting. Let's go do our budget work. Thank you.